Dr. Zixnix adjusted his protective goggles nervously as he peered through the observation window. Inside the quarantine chamber, the human sat on the edge of the bed, looking thoroughly annoyed. The alien physician couldn't help but marvel at the creature's resilience. Here was a being from a planet so inhospitable, so fraught with danger, that it was classified as a death world. And yet, this human seemed more irritated by the quarantine protocols than concerned about her own condition. Fascinating, Zixnix muttered to himself, his antennae twitching with a mixture of scientific curiosity and apprehension. Simply fascinating. The human Jessica Harper was her name, let out a violent sneeze that made Zixnix instinctively take a step back, despite the thick transparent barrier between them. He watched in horror as a spray of microscopic droplets erupted from her facial orifices, each one potentially teeming with deadly pathogens. "For the love of all that's holy in the galaxy," Jessica groaned, wiping her nose with a tissue. "It's just a cold. You're acting like I'm carrying the plague." Zixnix cleared his throat, or what passed for a throat in his species. "MS Harper, I assure you that we are taking all necessary precautions for your safety and the safety of everyone aboard this station." Jessica rolled her eyes so hard Zixnix feared they might detach from their sockets. "Yeah, because a runny nose and a slight fever are definitely worth turning this place into a scene from Outbreak. Speaking of which, has anyone ever shown you guys some classic Earth movies? Might help you calm down a bit." The doctor's tendrils curled in confusion. "I'm not familiar with this outbreak you speak of, but I can assure you that our response is entirely proportional to the threat at hand." "Proportional," Jessica scoffed, her voice a perfect blend of amusement and exasperation. "Doc, I've seen less security around nuclear warheads. You've got more layers of decontamination between us than a germaphobe's bathroom." Zixnix felt a flush of indignation color his epidermis. "MS Harper, you must understand. Your species comes from a planet that we classify," as he paused, searching for a diplomatic term. "A death world," Jessica finished for him, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, I've heard that one before. Earth, where everything's trying to kill you," including the air. She punctuated this statement with another sneeze, causing Zixnix to flinch visibly. "Precisely," the doctor replied, trying to regain his composure. "The microorganisms that your body considers harmless could potentially devastate our entire station's population. We simply cannot take any chances." Jessica leaned back on the bed, a mischievous glint in her eye. "So, what you're saying is, I'm basically a walking biological weapon." Zixnix's eyes widened in alarm. "I wouldn't put it quite that way, but—" "Oh, come on," Jessica interrupted, throwing her hands up in exasperation. "You've practically got me in a bubble like I'm about to start the next intergalactic pandemic. Might as well embrace it, right? Ooh, maybe we could market it human sneezes, the ultimate defense system. We'd make a killing in the arms trade." The doctor's tendrils twisted in distress. "MS Harper, please. This is no laughing matter. The potential for cross-species contamination is—" "Relax," Doc. Jessica chuckled, her laughter quickly dissolving into a coughing fit. "I'm just trying to lighten the mood. You guys are wound tighter than a tick on a dog's. Well, you probably don't want to know where ticks like to hang out." Zixnix made a mental note to research Earth parasites later, though he had a feeling he'd regret it. Be that as it may, we must follow protocol. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to consult with the xenobiology team about your treatment." As the doctor turned to leave, Jessica called out, "Hey, while you're out there, any chance you could smuggle in a pizza? Or is Earth food considered a biohazard too?" Zixnix paused, his tendrils twitching in what might have been the alien equivalent of a sigh. "I'll see what I can do, S. Harper." As the door to the observation room slid shut behind him, Dr. Zixnix found himself face to face with his colleague, Dr. Quixtal. The lanky, green-skinned alien was practically vibrating with excitement, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in sequence. "Well," Quixtal demanded, his voice a high-pitched squeak, "how is the human specimen?" Have you observed any mutation of the pathogen? Any signs of impending doom? Zixnix felt a headache forming in what passed for his frontal lobe. Quick's towel, for the last time she's a patient, not a specimen. And no, there are no signs of impending doom. It appears to be a simple respiratory infection, just as she claimed. Quick's towel's disappointment was palpable. But she's a Deathworlder. Surely her microbes must be evolving into some sort of super virus as we speak. The only thing evolving here is my patient, Zixnix muttered under his breath. Louder, he added, I think we may be overreacting a bit. Perhaps we should consider easing some of the quarantine restrictions. Quick's towel gasped, his color changing to a sickly yellow. Ease restrictions? Are you mad? Do you want us all to end up as gelatinous puddles of goo? Now who's overreacting? Zixnix retorted. Look, I'm not suggesting we let her run free on the station, but maybe we could at least allow her some comforts. She asked for, what was it? Oh yes, a pizza. A pizza, Quick's towel repeated, mangling the pronunciation. Is that some kind of earth weapon? Zixnix felt the urge to bang his head against the nearest wall. No, I believe it's a type of food. Although, given what I've heard about Earth cuisine, it might as well be a weapon. Just then, a junior medical officer came sprinting down the corridor, his tentacles flailing in panic. Doctors, we have a situation. Both Zixnix and Quick's towel turned to face the newcomer, their professional demeanors instantly snapping back into place. What is it, Blixmore? Zixnix asked, trying to keep the weariness out of his voice. Blixmore skidded to a halt, panting heavily. It's the human. She's... Spit it out, man, Quick's towel squeaked, his eyes spinning in their sockets. She's singing. Blixmore finally managed to blurt out. There was a moment of stunned silence. Singing, Zixnix repeated, certain he must have misheard. Blixmore nodded vigorously. Yes, some sort of rhythmic vocalization. It's terrible. The monitoring equipment is going haywire. Without another word, the three aliens rushed back to the observation room. As they entered, they were hit by a wall of sound that made their sensory organs quiver. Ivy got a lovely bunch of coconuts, diddly-dee-dee. There they are standing in a row. Jessica's voice boomed through the speakers, slightly off-key but full of enthusiasm. Zixnix winced, his auditory receptors struggling to process the cacophony. MS Harper. What in the name of the Galactic Council are you doing? Jessica paused mid-verse, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. Oh, hey, Doc. Just thought I'd entertain myself with some classic Earth tunes you like. Quick's towel, who had been cowering behind a console, peeked out cautiously. Is this some kind of sonic weapon? Jessica's laughter filled the room, punctuated by a series of sneezes. Oh man, you guys are priceless. It's just a silly song about coconuts. You know, those hard brown things that grow on trees. Actually, fun fact, coconuts kill more people on Earth each year than sharks do. Imagine that. The three aliens exchanged horrified glances. Blixmore looked like he might faint. Your planet has murderous plant life too, Quick's towel whispered, his voice trembling. Jessica rolled her eyes. No, you doof. They just fall from really tall trees sometimes. It's not like they're out there hunting people down. Zixnix cleared his throat, trying to regain some semblance of control over the situation. MS Harper, while we appreciate your attempt at cultural exchange, I must ask you to refrain from such loud vocalizations. It's disrupting our equipment and causing distress among the staff. Distress, Jessica snorted. Doc, if you think this is distressing, you should hear me try to hit the high notes in Bohemian Rhapsody. Now that's a real horror show. Quick's towel tugged urgently on Zixnix's sleeve. Doctor, we must increase security measures immediately. Who knows what other terrifying abilities this human might possess? Jessica's eyes lit up with mischief. Ooh, other abilities. Well, let's see. I can touch my nose with my tongue. Does that count? Oh, and I once ate an entire large pizza in one sitting. That's got to be some kind of superpower, right? Zixnix felt a migraine coming on. He made a mental note to research human pain relievers, environmental hazards, and possibly retirement options on a nice, quiet asteroid somewhere far, far away from any Deathworlders. MS Harper, he began, trying to keep his voice steady. I understand that you're feeling restless, but please try to understand our position. Your biology is frankly terrifying to us. We're simply trying to ensure everyone's safety. Jessica's expression softened a bit. Okay. I get it. I'm sorry for freaking you guys out. It's just, this is all so ridiculous from my perspective, you know. Back home, I'd be curled up on the couch with some chicken soup and bad TV. Not locked in a high-tech quarantine chamber with a bunch of aliens treating me like I'm patient zero. Zixnix felt a twinge of sympathy. I suppose it must seem quite overwhelming. Perhaps we could arrange for some entertainment to help pass the time. Something less auditory. Now you're talking. Jessica perked up. Got any good books? Or maybe a deck of cards? I could teach you guys how to play poker. Quickstow's tendrils perked up with interest. Poker? Is this some kind of Earth combat training? Jessica burst out laughing, which quickly turned into a coughing fit. Oh man, you guys really need to lighten up. It's a card game. Although the way some people play it, it might as well be combat training. As Zixnix watched the interaction, a thought began to form in his mind. Perhaps this quarantine situation could be more than just a medical precaution. It could be an opportunity for cultural exchange, a chance to learn more about these fascinating and terrifying Deathworlders. MS Harper, he said, an idea taking shape. How would you feel about giving us a bit of an education about Earth? In return, we could teach you about our cultures. It might help make this quarantine period more bearable for all of us. Jessica's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. Now that's what I'm talking about. Cultural exchange 101. Let's do this. But fair warning, Earth is weird. Like really weird. You might want to brace yourselves. Quick's towel looked both terrified and intrigued. I suppose in the name of science we could engage in this exchange, but please, no more of that singing. Deal. Jessica grinned. But I reserve the right to hum occasionally. A girl's got to have some fun in quarantine, right? As the aliens settled in for what promised to be an enlightening and possibly traumatizing education about Earth, Zixnix couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. He had a feeling that by the time this quarantine was over, their view of the universe, and especially of Deathworlders, would never be the same. Little did they know, Jessica's impromptu Earth 101 class was about to turn their entire understanding of the galaxy on its head. All right, boys, Jessica said, rubbing her hands together with glee. Let's start with the basics. Earth, third rock from the sun, home to approximately 8 billion humans, countless other species, and more varieties of cheese than you can shake a stick at. Blixmore's tentacles wiggled in confusion. Excuse me, but why would one shake a stick at cheese? Jessica blinked. It's just a... You know what, never mind. Earth idioms, lesson 1, don't take everything literally. Zixnix, who had been furiously taking notes, looked up. 8 billion. And you all survive on a death world. Survive and thrive, baby. Jessica grinned. We're like cockroaches. No offense to any insectoid species present. Quick's towel, who had been inching closer, despite his better judgment, piped up. What's a cockroach? Jessica's grin turned downright diabolical. Oh, you're going to love this. Picture a creature that can survive nuclear radiation, live for a week without its head, hold its breath for 40 minutes, and eat pretty much anything. The aliens exchanged horrified glances. And these? Cockroaches, Zixnix asked hesitantly. They're your pets. Jessica burst out laughing, which quickly devolved into a coughing fit. After recovering, she wiped tears from her eyes. Pets. Oh, hell no. We spend most of our time trying to kill the little buggers. They're pests. Let me get this straight, Quixtal said, his voice rising to a squeak. You have creatures on your planet that can survive things that would kill most sentient beings, and you consider them annoying. Pretty much, yeah, Jessica shrugged. Welcome to Earth, where even our pests are hardcore. Blixmore looked like he might faint. And you said there are countless other species. Jessica nodded enthusiastically. Oh yeah. We've got everything from microscopic organisms that can survive in volcanic vents to enormous whales that communicate across entire oceans. There's a jellyfish that's basically immortal, a frog that can freeze solid and thaw out just fine, and don't even get me started on tardigrades. Tardy. What Zixnix asked, his pen hovering over his notepad. Tardigrades. Tiny little guys, also known as water bears. They can survive in space, like actual outer space. There was a moment of stunned silence. MS Harper Zixnix said slowly, Are you telling us that Earth has naturally occurring spacefarers? Jessica considered this for a moment. I guess we do. Never thought of it that way. Cool. Quixtal had gone an interesting shade of green. This cannot be possible. Surely you're exaggerating for dramatic effect. No, all true, Jessica said, popping the P sound. Oh, and did I mention that humans have been to space too? We've even walked on our moon. The alien stared at her in disbelief. Your species, Blixmore said, his voice barely above a whisper, willingly left your death world to explore an airless rock. Jessica nodded. Yep, we're kind of big on exploration. There's this old Earth saying to boldly go where no man has gone before. It's from a TV show, but it kind of sums up our whole deal. Zixnix's tendrils were practically tied in knots as he tried to process this information. But why would you risk leaving the relative safety of your planet? Jessica's eyes sparkled with a mixture of amusement and pride. Because it's there, Doc. Because we can. Humans have this insatiable curiosity. We see a mountain, we want to climb it. We see an ocean, we want to cross it. We see a planet, we want to land on it. It's just who we are. Quixtal shook his head in disbelief. It seems to me that your species has a death wish. Nah, Jessica laughed. We've just got a different perspective on risk, I guess. To us, a life without adventure isn't much of a life at all. Blixmore, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly spoke up. But surely your planet must have some areas of peace and tranquility, places where life isn't constantly in danger. Jessica thought for a moment, tapping her chin. Well, we do have some pretty chill spots. Tropical beaches, serene forests, that sort of thing. But even those have their dangers. Riptides, poisonous plants, the occasional predator. Speaking of predators, let me tell you about Australia. The aliens leaned in, a mix of fascination and dread on their faces. Australia, Jessica began, her voice taking on a storyteller's cadence, is a continent that's basically Earth's hard mode. It's got deserts that'll fry you, oceans that'll drown you, and more venomous critters than you can shake. Well, you get the idea. Zixnix's pen was practically smoking as he scribbled notes. And humans live there? Voluntarily. Oh yeah, Jessica nodded. About 25 million of them. They've got cities, farms, the whole shebang. And get this, it's a popular tourist destination. Quixtal's eyes were spinning in their sockets. Tourists. People visit this death trap for. Fun. Jessica grinned. Absolutely. People come from all over the world to see the Great Barrier Reef, cuddle koalas, and try not to get eaten by crocodiles or great white sharks. There was a moment of stunned silence as the aliens tried to process this information. MS. Harper Zixnix said slowly, I'm beginning to think that our classification of Earth as a death world may be inadequate. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Oh? How so? Well, the doctor explained, his tendrils twitching nervously. A death world implies a planet that is hostile to life. But from what you're telling us, Earth isn't just teeming with life. It's practically bursting with it. Life that has not only adapted to these extreme conditions but thrives in them. And at the top of this ecological pyramid sits your species, treating it all as an adventure park, Jessica supplied helpfully. Precisely, Zixnix exclaimed. It's unprecedented. Quixtal, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. But what about your technology? Surely you've developed incredible defenses to survive in such an environment. Jessica shrugged. I mean, we've got some cool stuff. Air conditioning, antibiotics, smartphones. But mostly we just kind of roll with it. Adapt and overcome, you know. Blixmore's tentacles were practically tied in knots. But how? How do you maintain your sanity in the face of constant danger? Jessica's expression softened a bit. Look, I know Earth sounds pretty intense from your perspective. And yeah, it can be dangerous. But it's also beautiful, you know. We've got snow-capped mountains and golden beaches, lush rainforests and stark deserts. We've got art and music and literature that tries to capture it all. Heck, half the time we're too busy arguing about sports or binge-watching TV shows to even think about the dangers. The aliens exchanged bewildered glances. Besides, Jessica continued, a mischievous glint in her eye. Danger is relative, right? I mean, to us the idea of living on a space station seems pretty risky. One hull breach and boom, game over. Zixnix blinked in surprise. But our station is equipped with the most advanced safety measures in the galaxy. Jessica shrugged. Sure, but stuff can always go wrong, right? That's life. Whether you're in a space station or on a death world, there's always risk. The trick is to not let it paralyze you. There was a moment of thoughtful silence as the aliens pondered this perspective. MS. Harper Zixnix said finally, I believe we may have seriously underestimated your species. Jessica grinned. Oh, thanks, Doc. We're not so bad once you get to know us. A bit crazy, sure, but in a fun way. Usually. Quixtal, who had been furiously taking notes, looked up with a mixture of fear and excitement in his eyes. Do you think we could visit Earth someday? Jessica's face lit up. Now that would be something. I can just imagine the tourism slogans now. Earth where every day is an adventure, and sunscreen is your best friend. As the aliens chuckled nervously, Jessica felt a familiar tickle in her nose. Oh guys, you might want to step back. I feel another sneeze coming on. The aliens scrambled back as Jessica let out an almighty AQ, followed by a series of coughs. Bless you, Zixnix said automatically, then froze. Wait, is that the correct response? It's not some kind of incantation to ward off evil spirits, is it? Jessica couldn't help but laugh, which only made her cough more. No, you got it right. Just a polite thing we say. Although now that you mention it, the origin of that custom is pretty interesting. You see, people used to think. And so, as Jessica launched into an impromptu history lesson on human sneezing customs, the aliens found themselves drawn in once again. Despite their initial fear, they were beginning to realize that this quarantine might just be the most fascinating experience of their lives. Little did they know, Jessica's cold was about to take an unexpected turn, leading to a series of events that would challenge everything they thought they knew about humans, death worlds, and the very nature of life in the galaxy. As Jessica's sneezing fit subsided, Zixnix noticed something peculiar on the medical readouts. That's odd, he muttered, his tendrils twitching with concern. What's up, Doc? Jessica asked, her voice slightly hoarse. Don't tell me I've spawned some kind of super virus. Though, given what I've told you about Earth, I wouldn't blame you for thinking that. Zixnix shook his head, his large eyes blinking rapidly as he studied the data. No, it's not that. It's just. According to these readings, your body temperature has actually decreased. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Decreased? That's weird. Usually when humans get sick, we run a fever, to cook the germs or whatever. Quick's Tal, who had been hovering nervously nearby, let out a high-pitched squeak. Cook the germs? Your bodies intentionally raise their temperature to damage pathogens. That's metal as hell, Jessica supplied with a grin. I was going to say terrifyingly efficient, but yes, I suppose that works too, Quick's Tal conceded. Blixmore, who had been monitoring the environmental controls, suddenly let out an alarmed chirp. Doctors. The quarantine chamber. It's getting colder. All eyes turned to the temperature readout, which was indeed showing a steady decrease. Fascinating, Zixnix murmured. It appears that MS. Harper's body is somehow affecting the ambient temperature of the room. Jessica looked around, suddenly noticing the faint wisps of her breath in the air. Guys? I don't think that's supposed to happen. Quick's Tal's eyes were spinning so fast they were almost a blur. This is unprecedented. A human influencing their environment at a molecular level. It defies all known laws of physics. Now hold on, Jessica said, raising her hands in a calming gesture. Let's not jump to conclusions. I'm sure there's a perfectly rational explanation for this. Maybe your environmental controls are on the fritz. Zixnix shook his head. Impossible. Our systems are triple redundant and constantly monitored. No, MS Harper. I'm afraid the only variable here is you. Jessica felt a chill run down her spine, and for once she wasn't sure if it was from the dropping temperature or the implications of what was happening. Okay, so let's say hypothetically that I am somehow causing this. What does that mean? Am I turning into some kind of human popsicle? The aliens exchanged confused glances. Popsicle Blixmore asked hesitantly. Frozen treat on a stick, Jessica explained quickly. Not important right now. What's important is figuring out what the hell is happening to me. Zixnix's tendrils were practically tying themselves in knots, as he thought. MS Harper, in all your discussions of Earth's varied and terrifying lifeforms, did you ever mention any creatures with cryotetic abilities? Jessica blinked. Cryo what now? The ability to manipulate cold, Quick's Tal supplied helpfully. Oh, Jessica said, then paused. Wait, are you asking me if Earth has like ice monsters or something? The aliens nodded eagerly. Jessica couldn't help but laugh, which came out as a puff of visible breath in the increasingly chilly air. Guys, come on. That's the stuff of fairy tales and superhero movies. We don't have. She trailed off, a look of realization dawning on her face. Oh, Zixnix prompted, leaning forward. Well, Jessica said slowly, we do have these tiny little guys called tardigrades, also known as water bears. They can survive being frozen solid. But that's different, right? They're not actively making things cold. Quick's Tal's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity. Perhaps not, but it's a start. MS Harper, is it possible that your cold has somehow activated a dormant ability in your genetic code? Some kind of evolutionary defense mechanism? Jessica stared at him for a long moment. You're serious, aren't you? Of course, Quick's Tal exclaimed. After everything you told us about Earth, would it really be so surprising if humans had hidden abilities? Jessica opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She thought about all the stories she'd told them about creatures surviving in volcanic vents, about animals that could regenerate lost limbs, about plants that could communicate over vast distances. Suddenly, the idea of a human developing cold powers didn't seem quite so far-fetched. Okay, she said finally, let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're right. That somehow my run-of-the-mill cold has awakened some kind of ice power. What do we do about it? Zixnix's tendrils straightened with determination. We study it, of course. This could be a breakthrough in our understanding of human biology and the adaptability of Deathworld species. Jessica felt another chill. And this time she was pretty sure it wasn't just from the cold. Guys, not to rain on your scientific parade or anything, but maybe we should focus on stopping this before I turn this whole station into an ice cube. The aliens looked at each other, then back at Jessica. It was clear they hadn't considered that possibility. Right, Zixnik said, shaking himself out of his scientific reverie. Of course. Safety first. Blixmore, begin heating the chamber. Quickstal, prepare a series of tests to determine the extent of MS. Harper's condition. As the aliens scurried about, Jessica sat on her bed, watching her breath form little clouds in the air. She couldn't help but think that when she'd wished for her quarantine to be more interesting, this wasn't exactly what she had in mind. "Hey, Doc," she called out to Zixnix. "Yes, Mess Harper." "Mal, if I start singing Let It Go Please Shoot Me." Zixnix blinked in confusion. I don't understand the reference, but I can assure you, we have no intention of harming you." Jessica sighed, her breath forming a particularly impressive cloud. "Never mind. Earth joke. Just let's figure this out, okay? Preferably before I give a whole new meaning to the term Cold War." As the aliens redoubled their efforts, none of them noticed the small, almost imperceptible smile playing at the corners of Jessica's mouth. After all, if she was going to be stuck in quarantine, she might as well make it interesting. And if that meant playing along with the aliens' theories about superpowered humans, well, who was she to spoil their fun? Little did they know, Jessica's little prank was about to spiral into an intergalactic incident that would redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. But that, as they say, is a story for another day. For now, as the quarantine chamber slowly transformed into a winter wonderland, Jessica couldn't help but think that this might just be the coolest sick day ever. Pun very much intended.